takes all the time and all your energy, but it fulfills you. When you find something that fulfills you, you don't think of quitting. You don't think of doing something else, you know?
This is Climate Curious, the podcast for people who are bored, scared, or confused by climate change.
I'm Maryam, Pasha, the director and curator at TEDxLondon and the co-host of this podcast, alongside the amazing Ben.
Hi,
I'm Maryam, Pasha, the director and curator at TEDxLondon and the co-host of this podcast, alongside the amazing Ben.
And hi, self-confessed climate normie, activist and advocate exploring what positive masculinities can look like.
Hello.
And self-confessed climate
This week
normie.
we're going to be joined by two amazing people from a part of the world that we've never spoken about.
Never been to.
Yeah, I've never been either.
Mysterious. Elusive.
Yes. Let me tell you a bit about them because I think it's going to be quite a great conversation. I think it's going to be one we all need these days with a bit of optimism and inspiration. But today we're going to be joined by two incredible grassroots activists, Besjana Guri and Olsi Nika. Besjana is a social worker and Olsi is a biologist and aquatic ecologist. I'm hoping he tells us what that is. And they are two activists from Albania who spent, I think, over a decade trying to protect one of the last wild rivers in Europe.
What's a wild river?
This is what I'm so excited to find out, to be honest, because I know it sounds maybe ridiculous, but I didn't know there were different kinds of rivers. And so the really exciting thing is that they are just one of 7 groups who've just won the Goldman Environmental Prize. The Goldman Prize is very, very cool. I've been stalking its winners for years. And basically what it does is it picks out amazing leadership and achievement of grassroots activists from around the world, and I think quite inspirational to help us win at a time when things feel impossible. So should we jump into it?
Hi, Bessie and Olsi.
My first question is tell us a bit about both of you. What brought you to this work?
So we definitely didn't know each other before the Vjosa. So we met each other on 2 positions, in fact. So we started to work for the Vjosa project, and that was 12 years ago. So basically the Vjosa brought us together. And we both were very young at that time. Olsi had started some months earlier than me to work for the Vjosa project, and I joined. And we were just creating, the team was just being set up in Albania to run the campaign for the protection of the Vjosa River. And since then, we've been working together for many, many actions and to make sure that the Vjosa still frees flowing.
Amazing. And just tell us a bit about you and your background. Is this something that you have both done? Have you been
Climate activist from a baby,
Yeah, what's your background?
I studied social work. I'm a social scientist. That was my background when it comes to university. But before that, I've been living in a small town in northeast of Albania. And as a kid, I was grown in a very beautiful nature around. I only saw nice and beautiful nature. I always was very connected to outdoors and to nature. And I think that was really an important thing in my life that determined, at least in myself, love for nature and passion for nature. But to be honest, I didn't know that I would become an environmental activist when I was a teenager, for instance. But when I was a grown-up, I knew that I wanted to do something, and I wanted to work in a project that deals with some mountain area, protected area, environmental issues. So that was, and but yeah, of course, Vjosa then determined my activism life, and that's from my side.
How about you, Olsi?
It's pretty much similar, but I'm coming from the south of Albania, so a little bit more closer to the Vjosa. But honestly speaking, I did not have a clue, about the uniqueness of the Vjosa, and I got to know when I was starting to work with it. But I'm by background, I'm closer, to what I've been doing because I studied biology. hydrobiology, as a matter of fact, and then I'm specialized in aquatic biology and environmental biology.
Okay.
So it's practically what I studied for. So I'm expert on assessing the water quality on freshwater, marine water as well. However, the campaigning is nothing to do with my scientific background.
All right.
Because it's absolutely something else. So it's more about engaging, it's more about communication, it's more about inspiring, it's more about coordination. And keep going and persisting. And I think this is what I've been doing. And my let's say my research and scientific career, it's a kind of going in parallel with this one. Although at the Vjosa, it's I think it's an important ground to also conduct studies and researches, and that's what the wide community of scientists are doing since 2016 in the Vjosa. They call the river as their little lab, their little baby. So that's why they also want to preserve it.
Will you actually tell us a bit about the Vjosa and why it's so special?
The Vjosa is it's literally a unique river, and the uniqueness mostly comes from the fact that it's an intact river. So it's a free flowing from the source to the sea, and not only the Vjosa but also the tributaries, creating such a really amazing, outstanding, and unique free-flowing river and ecosystem, which is very rare nowadays in Europe. Because of the historical background that the rivers in Europe are being used since, I don't know, centuries ago, by building dams, dikes, navigation purposes, whatever. And Vjosa is, on this context, Vjosa it's absolutely a free-flowing river. And being a free-flowing, then it's the basis of providing home to a variety of species, endemic species, threatened species, and of course, it's also a variety of habitats. And it's a healthy ecosystem that could provide more than altered or tamed river, basically.
This is so interesting.
Right.
My context for rivers is only the Thames, and I just feel like that's not like it's not a river that you like. I mean, it doesn't
not
feel
wild.
like a beloved river, right? And then
No,
are there
literally.
species that live in there? I don't know.
Exactly, literally, it's really unfortunate to say, but that's a reality that young generations in Europe are. That's what they have as a river, just a canal, and that's what they know because they were born and raised by a canal, and that's what they call a river. And then we're coming in the Balkans, not only in the Vjosa, with they see a river, they say, but that's something else. Because they're not used to. When we filed a complaint to the Berne Convention against the construction of hydropowers in the Vjosa, they organized an on-the-spot appraisal with an independent expert to come and check, the facts on site. And that expert was also from, I think, Scotland or England, but was, from UK. We were in the Vjosa. He was, of course, astonished, and I just asked him one question. What had been the last time that you have seen a river like this, and where? And he said just 35 years ago in Africa.
Yeah, I never thought of this idea of wild rivers. It's very evocative. I guess we've mentioned this the hydropower a few times, and I guess for those like me who just don't really know the ins and outs of how this impacts rivers and nature, will you tell us a bit about it?
I thought hydropower was a good thing. In my mind, it's like the same as like wind turbines and solar panels, where it's like those are just things that are good because they're natural sources of energy. But it sounds like we don't like hydropower for the river. I don't know.
If I may, it's just to be clear, everything has its ecological footprint. It's just a matter of how much it justifies, the development, any project. So the coal, the oil, the hydropower, wind, solar as well. But it's just a matter of how justifies the development of it, and it's also just a matter of how less it's harming, the environment. And of course, there's nothing good, just to be sure about it. The best energy and the cheaper one is the one which is not produced, or the saved one. That's the simple rule when it comes to the energy. However, the hydropower back in, several decades ago was literally thought as a green and renewable energy. And in this, we have also part of the scene, like with the environmentalists, because we have pushed more into the hydro because we were criticizing mostly the coal and oil, However, the more and more studies and the research show that there is literally no other way worse than the hydropower in relation to biodiversity and to the local communities. So hydropower kills the biodiversity forever, because if one dam in the Vjosa River would have been built, that river would have been killed forever, because it blocks the migratory ways for water, for sediments, and for fish and other species.
Right.
So it's practically becoming a dead river, like many others in Europe that are just canals, so they don't host biodiversity. And in relation to the local communities, I will give you only one figure. So worldwide, there are more than 80 million people that are obliged and forced to be resettled because of the hydropower, because either they are going to be flooded, their lands, their resources, or they have to move because of the lack of water on the diversion schemes. And, that's really an impactful figure.
Is it right? I mean, I'm just curious. Is this something that's reversible? Like, can you bring these rivers back once you dam them? Or is it kind of once you've done it, it's done?
That's another thing for the hydropower. The damage that they do to the river is irreversible, or very hardly reversible, because they block basically the roots for fish, they block the sediments, they flood the area, and they affect not only above the dam, but also downstream. By deepening the riverbed, by blocking the sediments, they don't reach the sea and we lose the land. So the sea takes advantage and the sea erosion is even more higher. And the species that lived there, they will get extinct because they cannot survive in a new environment that they will be living. And coming back to the social aspects, the people that will have to leave their houses, definitely they will have to start the life in elsewhere, somewhere else. So the impacts are really irreversible. And when it comes to wild rivers, then with only one dam, you definitely kill it, because the whole story about the wild rivers is they flow freely in their riverbed and they're not interrupted together with all the biodiversity that live there. So if you put one dam, you kill it. Imagine even more, like it was in the Vjosa. We started the fight against one big dam, but on the way, there were 45 hydropower plants in all the river itself
45
and tributaries. So including the whole river system of the Vjosa was planned to be dammed and to be built and to be diverted. So that would be a total disaster.
Wow.
Luckily, that's out of the agenda now. We managed to save the river, and we have a Wild River National Park, which is a great success for Albania, but not only, also for Europe, and hopefully to be a blueprint project for other rivers in the Balkans.
So why were the developers planning? Did they, this might sound like a stupid question in hindsight, but did they not know at the time what the impacts would be, or did they just not care about what the impacts were going to be on the river and the environment around it?
I would say they didn't care.
Right.
And might be that they didn't have a lot of information because the Vjosa was not that much studied. So there were some data about, biodiversity and importance when it comes to natural ecosystem of the Vjosa, but there was very old data or few data. So we started, when we were campaigning, we started also to give more and more scientific arguments and to prove that why Vjosa is so special.
So maybe could you take us through that? Because I guess I'm just so curious to know how from 12 years ago when you started to getting this designation as a national park. Can you take us through that journey a little bit?
So initially, there was a study that was conducted by two international organizations, our partner organizations, Riverwatch and Aeronatur, which they assessed all the Balkan rivers, and in comparison to the European rivers, they saw that all the last free-flowing rivers and pristine rivers are in the Balkans. And they identified all these rivers. And Vjosa was one of the most important ones, the big wild river in Europe that needed protection, because at the same time, of course, they also assessed the threats, which was the hydropower. And in that time, there were like 2,000 something. Now we are 4,000 and more. I can't remember the figure now, but after 12 years, the number of the planned and even the constructed one is increased. But when we started, that was how the campaign started. And for the Vjosa, as I said, there was not very much known. So people would say like we know more about the Amazon than about the Vjosa in Albania. So that's how it started. We definitely wanted to launch a public campaign, and in the meantime engage other actors like we did. But the first thing that we did was be in the valley. We had meetings with local people, meetings with local government, and explain what are the plans for the hydropower and what are the opportunities, which is the national park. We've been clear since the beginning. We want to stop the dams and we want to have the Vjosa as a national park. And that was really important for us. I think that was one of the main things that helped us stay focused, was that we have a clear vision since the beginning and we stick to it. But of course, we needed people to be aware and to also to join the cause. Definitely the local people, they had no clue. They had no clue that the hydropower are going to be built. Right. Except one that was publicly known. There was a concession about one hydropower, but they didn't know that there were 8 hydropower in the main river. Wow. And the rest of it in the tributaries. So they started to, of course, to get worried, and also at the same time we wanted to empower them with information, and we raised more awareness on the wild river. It was a new concept, to be honest, in Albania. Nobody knew what a wild river means, for the wider public, I mean, because experts, of course, they know. But people, they didn't know. So we started raising awareness about the importance of wild rivers and the biodiversity that lives in there. And more data came, of course, but initially we had some good examples to share with them. Later, of course, we tried to engage the scientists, because we knew that we would be much more stronger if we have their engagement and if we have scientific arguments, because definitely we couldn't continue with same things. And luckily we had at the time 2 main scientists, one from Austria, from Vienna University, Professor Schimmer, and Miho from University of Tirana. They were the 2 main drivers of the scientists for Vjosa that became a movement after some years, because what they did is really special. We invited them to go in the affected area where the one dam was going to be built. In fact, in our case, two big dams were going to be built. And for 1 week, they assessed different fields of biodiversity and hydromorphology and sedimentology of the river. And with their data, we could oppose the EIA report, the impact assessment reports. We could oppose in court. We could go in public with all the information that they gave. They assessed the river very quickly, but the data that they came up were amazing, because they could find even new species to science in just 1 assessment. And that was really very strong argument for us.
I want to just go back and ask you this question. Why did you personally get involved in this?
Yeah,
Like,
why did you care?
I guess,
Yeah.
why did you care? I mean, 12 years is a long time to work on something. And both of you said at the beginning that this is not like in the middle, like it's not like your job, like you weren't coming at this with a professional kind of hat on. So why, how did you get interested? How did you get to care about this?
I think I also see myself that I have grown so much with this job, and it became part of my life. But not only now, pretty soon, I would say. I mean, the first year was really decisive, because the first year we launched a public campaign. We started to be in touch with the local people and to try to do the lobby work and so on. And in the first year, we also dedicated more time while we set up the new organization, the Albanian, working focused mainly on the Vjosa. And everything that came into our minds at that time was how to do it, what to do more, So it became a mission, and day by day. So it was let's say a yearly mission, and then it became a life mission. And I think it's not. I don't know if there was like a certain moment, but every little moment that convinced and made me at least work more and more, and not just work, it became more than just work. It's beyond the normal work. It's beyond the 8 hours. It's a 24 hour job. It
Yeah.
Right.
takes all the time and all your energy, but it fulfills you. When you find something that fulfills you, you don't think of quitting. You don't think of doing something else,
I'm sure that it was not an easy campaign to fight and to win. Will you tell us a bit about some of the maybe moments that stand out for you, that either where you felt like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, or where you felt a real
I can't
sense
believe
of,
we're doing this.
Yeah, I can't believe we're doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, there are plenty of these moments. Surely the campaign was not a linear path towards a success. That's for sure not the case. But it has been many obstacles on our way, many setbacks, many deep disappointments that we said, okay, that's it, it's over. But when we started the campaign, one of the major hydropower was already under construction. It was owned by a guy that controlled the majority of the politics and politicians. They had a huge, or one of the biggest media, so it was, really a tough and big guy. But then we were there, and the tiny mosquitoes in the room, and trying to disturb him to be on his way. But then it was really starting with a handful of people, and then it was literally started to grow and grow and grow. Of course, in the way there had been many obstacles. One of them was one of the first case ever, environmental case ever in the court, where the court decided to cancel one hydropower. The government reissued another concession for another hydropower just 10 kilometers upstream. And ironically, the winner was the same company that just lost a week ago in the court. You can see how you feel after 6 years of campaigning, and then, a huge victory in the court. And then 1 week later, the big guy said that, no, I'm the one who decides here. So sit down and wait. Right. And you feel really small in this case. And it's difficult to get up again and start walking. But, we were always having the clear vision, and then the principle of we came a long way, so we cannot abandon and give up now. So we have to continue. And that has been the guiding principle, I guess, in the campaign. But there have been many other disappointments from the beginning to the very end. Disappointment, seeing people trying to divide the local community. We have been witnessing many accusations in the media, like these guys are not patriotic enough because they are not wanting the country to be developed. They want us to be energy dependent from neighboring enemy countries, and so on and so forth. So we have been witnessing many of these. And it's a continuous challenge, which is also currently now, because nothing is over, and the efforts to preserve and to protect the Vjosa, and also to see the national park, because it was like a dream for us, and to see the national park happening and being operational on the ground.
I imagine that there were lots of very powerful interests. Like you mentioned, obviously the government is one, but the developers, people from outside the country, will you tell us a bit about those pressures and how you had to navigate them?
Yes, there have been pressures, but we were never been a target of pressure in terms of, from the developer, from the concrete companies like construction and so on, because we also have never them as a target. We always have as a target the government, and that's, I think, part of the tactical success in the campaign. And that's fair enough, because all the hydropowers would have been built in concessionary terms, and in a concessionary contract, there are two parties, right? So it's the developer, which is usually the private party, and the public, which is us, but we have given the representative card to the government. And that's where we complain, because our government is not representing us in the contract, because it's destroying the nature, it's over exploiting the natural resources, and so on and so forth. And always in our campaign has been the decision makers and the government. However, there have been, pressures not towards us, but usually towards our allies, the local communities, some of the media as well, that we have heard. But yeah, that is a good tactic, because there have been other campaigns in Albania that mostly just choosing the wrong target has led to the failure.
You talked a bit about using the courts, about bringing the communities together. I guess that's my big question of how? What was it that you were able to convince? How did you do this? What was it that led to this victory?
There is always this hesitation to go into the court, and especially in Albania, because it's a really specific country where the judicial system was so corrupt, like you cannot imagine. Then there has been a really profound reform now in the judicial system. And just to let you know that more than half of the judges and prosecutors are out of the system now because they were found corrupted. And taking an environmental case into these courts, of course, there would be a huge hesitation, and then was. And I think this was the route why nobody else haven't tried it before us. But there is also another good side of the medal, that Albania has improved drastically the legal framework in terms of environment. And this is mainly because of the EU approximation and also the process of being a member of the EU. And it's also hard to find any convention, not only on environment, but also on other sectors, that Albania is not part of it. So Albania is part of all the conventions. And having said this, you have a huge room, to challenge cases, environmental cases, into these legal mechanisms. So basically you have a big advantage of using the environmental right. And, having analyzed this, you say, okay, let's try it. But the difficult part was finding the lawyer. Yes, that had been a real challenge. Because it was difficult for any lawyer to stay against the government, and it was difficult to find a lawyer that had a clue on environmental legislation. Because usually the environmental legislation is on a secondary, third priority of lawyers and Tories. Yeah. And yes, we managed to find one, a good one, although that he had nothing to do with the environmental right. He was a criminal, and he's one of the famous criminal attorneys. So basically not the criminal code. But It was a big success as there have been many support from outside and even from us on the technical aspects, and we managed to file a lawsuit against the Pochem hydropower and then to have the final decision from the court to prove us right. That created a huge opportunity for many other cases to follow.
Wow. How does it feel like to win something like this? And I say that with the context of you just said it's not over. We still have to like protect this national park. And so talk up to us about whether winning feels like an end point or does it just feel like another stop along the route of what you're doing?
Winning, I would say it gives even more responsibility to do more. So, of course, it is an acknowledgement of all the hard work and all the passion and dedication. And it proves that even when you think that you're doing just your job, it's not like that. It's important also for other people. It's not only important about you or about your country, but it's important for the whole planet. So that enforces, that. But also it's a great push to continue doing what you know better, what you know to do. And it's a motivation even to take new initiatives, for instance. So definitely, I think this prize is it's a big opportunity for activists to elevate their work, to increase their impact. For instance, in Albania, I think that was, for us it was a surprise. It was something we never expected, but even for our country, that was huge. Being the first Albanians to get the prize, and I think it's a great reminder to our government that the world is watching you and you don't have to stay quiet. We did our part, we declared the national park, and now we will do whatever we want. No, that shows that this is not the case. The world is watching you and they want to see what is happening. They want to see how you're implementing this park. They want to see how on the ground the park is going to be functional. And is there an administration there? Is there infrastructure, signage, and so on? And are people happy with that?
That's such a that's such an interesting way of thinking about it being winning. And I guess I'm curious to know if you have any hopes for how this might inspire other campaigners, other people, other communities, both locally in Albania or in the Balkans, or also more widely. Like, I guess a lot of people probably right now are feeling like it feels impossible. And I'm sure you've both maybe been at times when it's felt impossible. And I'm curious if there's anything you'd want to share.
I think I would say not only our case, but also the cases of other people, other winners, our other prize winners, are a great inspiration for everyone. All the activists that are fighting against some destructive projects, and they want to protect their land and their river and their mountain. It gives hope to see that they are still these nature guardians. They are still there and they are fighting to protect our nature. And to see successful stories, that's even more inspiring. Because we've seen, of course, many times that they are not successfully managed. There are a lot of disappointments when it comes to nature activism. But having the successful stories, it definitely inspires everyone to continue to do what they're doing and to never give up. So to stick to their plan. And in Albania, the Vjosa has been an inspirational campaign for many other fights that are still going on, which we also are part of it or are being led by other activists in Albania, but I would say also in the Balkans. We definitely can't wait to see another Balkan river being protected as a wild river, like the Una River. We are still hoping for the Vjosa to be internationally protected because it's a river that is shared by Greece and Albania. So there is so much to look forward, after this.
Incredible.
I love it. I also find it so inspiring to think that, like, like we always talk about everybody having their place in a movement. And I feel like I don't know like loads of marine biologists in real life, but I know loads of social workers. And I think it's so cool that the two of you have done this together. Like, you found this thing that's worth fighting for and worth preserving. And you've managed to like dedicate a large chunk of your life to doing that work, but you've also seen the fruits of that labor. I think it's like such an important message, especially at a time like now where everybody feels so disempowered and nobody knows what they're supposed to be doing. I think it's like an incredible message. So thank you so much for chatting to us, and thank you for sharing the story as well. It's such an incredible thing that you've done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Ben. And I guess my last question then is, what now?
Yeah, what's next?
Next is Vjosa again, for sure, because it's it's a story with different chapters. We just closed the very first one, so managed to have the park established. But there are many others. A new one is already opened. It's just ahead of us. So the national park has approved management plan, which is a guiding document on managing the park. It's also very close to get assembled team of managers, so the administration of the national park, and then we are there to push more towards having an effective management on the national park. Otherwise, it's it's not the fulfillment, but even more. Could be a bigger risk than even than having just a park on paper, because that creates a dangerous precedent in our perspective. And second is, of course, Vjosa is a specific national park. It's Europe's first wildlife national park. And even technically speaking, it comprises more into a core area of a national park. So having said this, our next objective is the park to get enlarged and to include more free-flowing tributaries and to enlarge especially the buffer area around the park in order to avoid the pressures to get directly to the core area, to the river itself. The third one is to address all the pressures to the national park, and it's something that we have started to do. So we have identified, mapped already the pressures, and we try to address them by the authorities, media, and other stakeholders. The other one, the fourth one, is of course the delta of the Vjosa River, which is a protected area, but it's not part of the Vjosa Wildlife National Park. So it's a category 4, while the river is a category 2. And this makes no sense because the delta is the integral part of the same ecosystem. And honestly speaking, is the most valuable part of the river. And also,
So the work is never done. Incredible. I love the work is never done. I hope that Ben and I can come visit the Vjosa one day and see your incredible work and see this national park.
See a real river.
Yeah.
My God, can you imagine?
It would be amazing. We look forward to having you back in 10 years and seeing all the incredible work you've done.
make it 5.
5 years.
Right.
5 years, 5 goals. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All the best.
Thank you for joining us this week. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you did, please hit the follow button to make sure that you get next week's releases.
And why not reach out with your very own climate confessions?
While you're at it, please leave a rating and a review.
Now, let's shout out to our fabulous team behind the pod.
Executive produced by Josie Colter.
Produced by Ben Beheshty.
Music also by Ben Beheshty.
Communications by Tara Cooper and Issey Gladston.
Curation by Deesha Chandra.
Hosted by Ben Hurst.
And Maryam Pasha.
And remember,
Stay curious.